The night they arrested me, I wasn't screaming. I wasn't resisting. I was standing in my own front yard next to a 6-foot row of arborvitae trees watching red and blue lights bounce off my windows because I had committed the unforgivable crime of wanting privacy in my own home. Before we go any further, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your last chance. Hit that subscribe button now, because the next story only gets crazier from here. My name's not important, call me Dana. 3 years ago, my husband and I bought our first home in a quiet subdivision called Maple Ridge Estates. Nice lawns, good schools, and a homeowners association that seemed harmless enough at the closing table. Nobody warns you what an H.O.A. can actually become until you're living inside its grip. Our backyard backed up directly onto a busy walking trail. Strangers jogging past our kitchen window, teenagers cutting through at midnight, dog walkers who could see straight into our living room. We didn't want a fortress, we just wanted a little privacy. So we did what any reasonable homeowner would do. We planted a hedge. I had no idea that 6 feet of arborvitae trees would trigger a legal war that would end with me in handcuffs and the H.O.A.'s entire board humiliated in court. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind. We researched everything before planting. Local zoning laws check. Height restrictions check. We even called the county to confirm there were no utility lines in the way. Everything was legal. Everything was by the book. The hedge went in on a Saturday morning in early spring. My husband and I spent 6 hours digging, planting, and watering 30 young arborvitae saplings along our back property line. It felt good. It felt like finally taking control of our own space. Within a week, they were thriving. Within 2 weeks, we found the first note taped to our door. It wasn't from a neighbor. It was from the H.O.A. board, and it wasn't a friendly heads up. It was a formal violation notice, citing a bylaw none of us had ever heard of. That single sheet of paper was the first domino. And trust me, the dominoes that followed were unbelievable. The letter claimed our hedge violated a sightline preservation clause buried on page 47 of the H.O.A.'s bylaws, a clause about maintaining open views for community aesthetic harmony. We'd never seen this rule before, and when we checked our copy of the covenants from closing, it wasn't even in there. We assumed it was a mistake. A miscommunication. So I did what you're supposed to do. I emailed the H.O.A. board president directly, politely asking for clarification. Her reply arrived within the hour, and it wasn't polite at all. She said the hedge needed to be removed within 7 days or further action would be taken. I remember laughing when I read that line. Further action? Over some trees? I had absolutely no idea how far this woman and this board were willing to go. Keep that in mind because it gets so much worse. We didn't remove the hedge. We couldn't find the rule anywhere in our official documents, so legally we felt protected. That decision triggered what I can only describe as a campaign. First came the fines. $50 a day, then $100, then $250, stacking up in weekly letters that arrived like clockwork. Within a month, we owed over $4,000 in violations for trees that were, by every county record, completely legal. Then came the surveillance. Board members photographing our yard from the walking trail. A drone hovering over our property twice in 1 week. My husband caught someone videotaping our windows through gaps in the hedge, the very privacy we'd tried to create. Then, one Tuesday evening, everything changed. Because that's the night the police showed up at our door. It was just past 7 p.m. My husband was grilling dinner. I was pulling weeds near the hedge line when I heard tires crunch into our driveway, not a neighbor's car, but a marked patrol vehicle. 2 officers stepped out, and one of them was holding paperwork. "Ma'am, we've received a formal complaint alleging criminal trespass and destruction of a shared easement." I stood there stunned. Shared easement? We owned that land outright. It was on our deed, verified by 2 separate surveys. But the H.O.A. had apparently filed a police report claiming our hedge encroached on association-owned property. I tried explaining. I offered to show them our survey documents sitting right inside the house. It didn't matter. The complaint had already triggered a process, and within minutes I was being handcuffed in my own front yard while my neighbors watched from their porches. My husband was screaming for them to check the paperwork. The officers said that part would be sorted out downtown. As they put me in the back of that patrol car, one thought kept repeating in my head: this H.O.A. just made the biggest mistake of its existence. What the H.O.A. board didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that I'd already started recording every email, every letter, every threat months earlier. And that decision was about to turn their entire case, and every case after it, into a courtroom disaster they never saw coming. I spent one night in a holding cell before the charges were dropped. The very next morning, the county prosecutor took one look at our property survey and refused to move forward. But the damage was done. I'd been arrested, fingerprinted, and humiliated in front of my entire street over a hedge that was legally mine to plant. So I hired a real estate attorney who specialized in H.O.A. disputes, and we started digging. What we found was staggering. The sightline clause the board cited didn't exist in any legally recorded version of the covenants. It had been fabricated, added to an internal document, but never filed with the county, which meant it was completely unenforceable. Worse, the board president who filed the police report had a documented history of disputes with at least 4 other homeowners, all involving fabricated violations. We had emails. We had the fraudulent bylaw comparison. We had proof of a false police report. My attorney looked at the file and said something I'll never forget: "Dana, they didn't just make a mistake. They handed us a lawsuit on a silver platter." The H.O.A., still refusing to back down, filed a civil suit against us for the original violation, demanding the Hedge's removal and thousands in accumulated fines. We countersued. In the first hearing, our attorney presented the county recorded covenants next to the H.O.A.'s altered version. The judge's expression said everything before he even ruled. The fabricated clause was thrown out entirely, the fines were voided, and the judge specifically noted, on record, that the H.O.A.'s actions raised serious concerns about board conduct. That was win number 1. The H.O., a board, humiliated but stubborn, decided the answer wasn't to stop, it was to escalate. They filed again. And again. Different angles, different technicalities, different lawyers. They had no idea they were about to lose every single one. Case 2, dismissed, because the H.O.A. couldn't produce a single legally filed document supporting their claim. Case 3, dismissed, after our discovery revealed the board president had personally altered H.O.A. records, a felony offense. Case 4, the board tried suing for harassment over our public records requests. The judge called it retaliatory and awarded us attorney's fees. By the 4th loss, word had spread through Maple Ridge Estates. Other homeowners came forward with their own stories of fabricated violations, secret fines, and intimidation. A pattern emerged that even local news picked up. The H.O.A. didn't just lose cases. They lost credibility, lost members, and eventually lost their board president entirely. She resigned days before a state investigation into H.O.A. financial fraud began digging into her records. 2 years later, our hedge stands taller than ever, thick, green, and completely, legally ours. Maple Ridge Estates voted in an entirely new H.O.A. board, one that actually follows its own bylaws. We received a formal written apology, full reimbursement of our legal fees, and maybe most satisfying of all, a public correction posted in the community newsletter admitting the original violation notice was invalid. Sometimes people ask if it was worth the fight. My arrest record is expunged. Our name is cleared. And every single case that H.O.A. filed against us collapsed in court, one after another, until there was nothing left of their authority but a cautionary tale other neighborhoods now use as a warning. So the next time someone tells you not to fight back against unchecked power, remember my hedge. Remember what happens when they pick the wrong homeowner to mess with.